We may have to delete the recording afterwards if we keep this up. We're on a roll already, but hopefully if anybody needs to review this, you'll have access to it, and we'll put it in the Padlet. And we just got one more person chime in, I think. In any case, we're here for, let's see, what's our session tonight? Tonight it's about best movies on Netflix during the pandemic, right? We're going to talk about some academic integrity, but before we get moving, Sandy, are you ready? You want to give us your joke?
Okay, I will give you the joke. Did you hear that there is a coin shortage? Did you hear that there is a coin shortage?
I'd say I heard something about it. So what?
Any guesses about a coin shortage?
What would be the punchline, I wonder?
Okay, here we go.
Oh, she typed it in the chat.
Oh.
You have to open your chat.
There's a penny shortage.
PK likes that one.
I like that one myself.
Yeah. All right.
That's my joke. That's the end of my joke.
No, that was good, Sandy. Thank you. We appreciate that. I am going to share my screen with you guys, and I'm going to click and not forget to choose optimize screen sharing for video clip. When I get to that point, I'll be able to do so. And now I'm going to show you our Padlet for this evening. Can everybody see that bright yellow? Sandy, I was going for wallpaper that had more of a caution look to it, thinking that academic integrity, yeah, it's about caution a little bit, but it turned out being quite yellow. And I'm just going to, I'll leave it that way. That's good. So I guess we all have different feelings about academic integrity, at least the folks in the morning did. And it's funny, one person didn't share their feelings until afterwards with us on the side. But I think that it runs the gamut from, like, why do we have to worry about academic integrity to, my goodness, if I don't keep a lookout on my students, they'll run away with the store. But the object is that we want to have an approach to infusing this in our courses at various levels for various reasons that is going to help us provide sort of guidelines for our students, or guidance to the students, to know, one, that, hey, we do have things in place and we are going to be trying to give you assurance that we're going to maintain a level playing field for all of the students. So for those of you that are doing things on the up and up, we want you to know that anybody that might be scamming the system a little bit is going to be held accountable for it. So, we're all kind of at the same playing field. And also that we know that our tools don't necessarily give us, full cooperation / protection. I got to be careful about some of the terminology I use here. We're not looking at making this, as I used the term militaristic last session at 11 o'clock today, but letting people know that we've got some capability to hopefully refrain them from even thinking about the idea, and having them do their best at providing their best work and making that authentic. As you can see, I put as a tagline in the Padlet, academic integrity and remote instruction, which is helping our students provide their best work. So we don't want to necessarily have this come across as we're the academic police or we're the course police. But we want to make people know that we have some things in place, and we're trying to deter any possibility of violating some integrity. And of course, there is a school policy and NCC policy about there that's out there, that's available for all of you. You have access to it in your Blackboard course, and I think it's always good to remind students of some of our policies are, including their academic honesty policy, which they all should be signing off on directly or indirectly. So I think we even, Sandy, remind me, do we actually have something about academic honesty in our syllabi now, or did that?
We have it in the course in the student information area, and we do have it also in, I think it's in the begin here, but we do have it in several places in the course.
And there may be some references to syllabi depending upon,
Yeah, they revised the
template.
syllabus and.
So our discussion tonight will be about some, obviously in this case, digital tools to use and utilize in remote instruction, which we are all dealing with at this point now. I'm assuming that all of you are remote instructors to some degree. I don't think we probably have anybody that's just doing on-ground instruction tonight. Even folks like Marilyn who do nursing are doing a combination probably of on-ground and online instruction. And we all have our hands in this in some way, shape, and form. So hopefully these tools will be ones that will help us do it in this cloud environment that we've all been relegated to. And there are many others besides what we're talking about here, both in terms of mechanisms that are designed to do this, and also mechanisms that you might employ yourself, which you may have done even pre-COVID or pre-remote instruction that you've been forced to. So let me just start by asking that. So when things turned the tide back in March, if you were an instructor or have been in the last 120 plus days, what did you do to try to maintain some academic integrity in your courses? Feel free to take the microphone and shout it out, or put something in the chat. Let me know what your direction was over the COVID period.
Well, I can tell you in nursing, we do have an academic integrity policy. And one of the concerns for us is that really they can't be signed off for NCLEX if you don't believe that they have a moral structure that would be able to manage the job of nursing and all of it. So one of the things I'm finding is this, in the research in nursing about academic dishonesty, the primary issue is that students feel that the program is not fair, that it is weighted against them in that. So one of the things that we really tried to do as clinical faculty is we really tried to support our theory faculty by saying these things are important, these concepts are really, and really relate those concepts to real life events and really treat the students as though they are the nurse in that. And having a why helps them a little bit. But you know, my number one problem is they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe they're smart enough to do this. They don't believe they can make good decisions. They, you know, in terms of the virtual environment, you can kill the patient on some of the simulations. And we tried to explain to them, that's okay. If you make a mistake.
Hey, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's okay. That's the time you want to make that mistake. But they perceive something like that as though I'll never learn. So it's how to almost grow them up a little bit about what it means to take on the accountability of somebody else's life in that, and giving them strategies to talk with us about what they don't understand. You know, come to us, we will tutor you, we will help you, whatever it is you need, so that they feel like it's more of a fair playing ground. There are a few students who honestly just don't want to do the work, but that's in the minority. That really is the minority.
That's I think that we all believe that those that do cheat are in the minority, right?
Yeah.
Or else, you know, it's part of our, maybe utopian isn't the right word to use, but part of what the fabric of what we do as teachers of students. And we don't want to believe that there's distrustful people out there that are looking to either scam the system or to try to get ahead in the wrong way.
And I think if I could say something, I think there's a lot of pressure, particularly in nursing. There's a lot of pressure put on them because they need to make the mark and maybe a little bit higher than other classes. And so I think it's not so much they're trying to scam the system as it is to, I need to get a good mark. So if I don't know an answer, I can, get it from somebody else.
Well, and the other piece of it, though, in nursing, there was an anonymous survey, and it really, about 60% of the students admitted to different forms of academic dishonesty in that. And so I think it's also how we create the environment, for them.
So Marilyn, specifically, what was done in nursing during that period of time when we had to move to remote modalities?
Specifically, we met with them as groups. We met with them individually. I didn't give theory tests in the spring. I did in the summer and am now. And we really are trying to. I do use the Proctorio. I do tell them that if they're doing a project with evidence-based, that I will be checking that in terms of going through. Really, some of the papers get passed along year to year. And that, and so I with one, I laughed up there. I said, no, I keep some of these papers. All right. So when you write something, please don't hand in something else, that somebody did last year. I may have it.
Yeah.
So
So good.
Yeah,
You're
that's true.
providing your own deterrent there, right? You're warning them ahead of time, which is not a bad thing to do.
Right. And the other thing we did is we did have a redo policy on projects, so that if they didn't do something well, there was no penalty for them to need to redo it. And the problem with that, of course, was time and grading anything that's a redo. And that, but it did help them to grow. And so in the beginning, we had to redo more, and then later we didn't. Our test plans are the objectives, and that's just how it is. But we did try to focus them on some of that to make, again, the playing field from their side more fair.
Okay.
So
Joe, may I ask a question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
In regards to any form of academic dishonesty or plagiarism or whatever the best vernacular would be, in the event that there's a suspicious incident, how much leeway do instructors have in handling the situation amongst the student and them versus should follow protocol for protocol's sake?
Yeah. And it's a hard thing for me to advise you on, because believe me, I'm really a technical guy and I don't step in the classrooms. And Sandy might have a little bit more to say about this than I, but I would tell you that in a general sense, and I've been with the institution for 23, 24 years. I've talked to many, many faculty about many, many things. So to a degree, I have this osmosis effect of what people say and do without practical experience myself. That said, I believe a lot of it is in your hands and at your discretion. I don't think that this institution dictates exactly what you should do. And that's probably because most circumstances are relatively unique, and you've got to sort of pair out, what the truth is in any circumstance, understand what evidence that you have, find out, from a student when an incident occurs, why it occurred or anything like that. And at your discretion, decide, well, okay, this is just your fair warning from me and it's not going beyond that, or do you feel like an incident needs to go directly into our reporting system called Maxian? And does it have to get raised to another level? Again, that may depend on the level of discretion that occurred in the circumstance. So I don't think there's any written rule to this, but I would say that your best way to get a better answer to this would be by talking to your division deans, assistant deans, and finding out what they have to say about it, because that answer is best coming from the schools themselves as to what their approach should be. Sandy, you want to add anything to that? Sandy on? Did she lose her audio? Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, it's going out.
Okay.
This must be the time of night. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay, what I was, I agree with everything you say. What I was going to just add to it, if you're not sure, go to the dean, or you might even go to the student's advisor. You can always, you know, if your dean isn't available, you can go to Sedgwick and, you know, see what his take on it is. And sometimes, you know, student may have a history of doing this kind of behavior, and you want to just confirm it. I personally want to make sure that I am completely on target before I do, you know, commit any accusations. And what's ironic about today is after we finished the session this morning, for some reason I checked in my class, lo and behold, I have a student with two, not one, but two blatant integrity violations. Is just as bold as day in McGraw-Hill in SimNet. So I want to be sure before I confront the student. So I called the rep, and you know they're going to verify it, but not everything is through, you know, a publisher. So if you're not sure, just go to the dean or go to Sedgwick.
I do have a brief follow-up, if I may, and I appreciate you both providing such candor.
Sure.
In the event that a situation does unfold, that it's no longer speculation, because I think Joe briefly mentioned like a software that we're supposed to use to input.
Mm-hmm.
Do we all, is that separate in terms of our process with Starfish?
Oh, yes.
Okay, should we also document on Starfish or not?
You can, and we also have Maxient.
Okay.
And that's
Maxient
the reporting system.
is the reporting system. So it could very well be that that student, you know, that you know, is suspicious, could also have complaints already in the Maxient system. But Starfish, yeah, I don't even think that would go into Starfish, except, you know, maybe to have an appointment with a counselor.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome. Okay, good question. Thank you. And anybody else want to input anything? I saw Megan put something about her being a first-time
Semester
instructor, so she doesn't have much to go on. And I'm sure CQ probably limited as well. Jess, are you with us? She's taught before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you want to offer, Jessica, regarding, you know, how you handled academic integrity in the past? Not there. So anyway, let's take a look at the Padlet. I think, let's see, do we have any new people or new to Padlet? I'd say most everybody has probably seen the concept of Padlet. This is a posting board, more or less, and we can just add things to it and provide links and documents and all types of stuff, and makes it kind of easy. Sandy has put the link to the Padlet in the chat, so if you want to review this later on, you're certainly welcome to look at it. So let's talk about the flavors of academic integrity and its importance. And on this first post here, I've indicated a few things. And I think the first and obvious one relates to the tagline that I put on the Padlet, and that is that, you know, this is a big part of the teaching and learning process. Indeed, it's a component of our course design. The course learning outcomes are, you know, what we're doing and why we do things for 16 weeks or whatever our semester is in your particular course situation. And in order to know that we're achieving those course outcomes, we have to have some assessments. But what good are those assessments if we aren't sure that indeed the students that are taking them are the ones that are supposed to be taking them? That's one kind of integrity, academic integrity piece, and that they are doing them honestly. And it's not just assessments per se, but other things that are being done in your course, any type of coursework that you're using basically to evaluate their progress along the way. So it's very important that we practice something for both the students' benefit and our benefit in terms of how it impacts the course overall. Other important thing is that there are best practice standards that we have to live by in our course development, and they, of course, are impacted by the quality of the assessments and making sure that that quality is maintained throughout what we do in our course design and in the 16-week semester. And last but not least, we have an obligation during the accreditation process to ensure that we have provided some type of mechanisms that will keep our students as honest as we can keep them, and provide measures for indicating that, you know, we have other systems like our reporting system that we just talked about, Maxient, and what we're doing in our courses to try to ensure integrity. And this, for those of you that don't know, Middle States looks at materials and documents and comes in to review what we do on an every 5-week basis. I'm sorry, every 5-year basis. Why did I say 5 weeks? And there's a full review every 10 years. And it's important that we show some documentation that we are indeed providing some academic integrity protocols and capabilities. In addition, there's a little bit of a contrast in what we call identity verification and academic integrity. And identity verification can be an important piece to this process. One little thing I want to mention, and it goes beyond just somebody not necessarily providing their own answers in an exam or on an essay that they've taken from somebody else, but also in total or in totality that that person who's in your course might not necessarily be the person that registered for your course. I don't know how often or if ever you've thought of that. We have a concept called shadow scholars out there that are basically doing the coursework for a student that has registered and are being paid for it. We also have very disingenuous people that sometimes register for coursework at the institution, and they're doing so that they can get to the point where they can get some financial aid in order to be at the institution and take these courses, and then all of a sudden they may be gone and have taken flight with some money that could have been used for some real students. These kinds of things do happen out there. We hear about them in the news. We hear about them in from some of the vendors that we use that provide some of our academic integrity tools, and they're relatively important. So what we are recommending, and you may be seeing some actual communication about this in the near future. You may get asked by your school, your division, your deans to actually provide some idea about how you are providing academic integrity options for your students and for you in your courses this fall. And keep in mind that this is just a small smattering of the difference between tools that provide verification and those that provide integrity. And on the bottom, some of those tools that you have access to. So on the left in the blue, you can see BioSig. You can verify with Zoom if indeed you are obviously know the identity of the person already. We can use tools like Flipgrid to do some verifying and video assignments. And then we have some integrity tools, SafeAssign, which we're going to go over today, and also BioSig we'll go over today. Plagiarisma, which is basically a cloud-based type of tool that you can apply if you want to. Just doing Google searches to see if some of the materials that your students are in giving you during assignments or whatever are indeed their own work. And one thing you don't see here, two things you don't see here are relatively new tools that we have access to. One called UniCheck, which is like SafeAssign or Turnitin, and another called Proctorio, which you heard Marilyn mention, which is our new test exam proctoring tool. We have been using other tools in the past, including something called Respondus Lockdown Browser, which you may have heard of. but we have discontinued the use of Respondus and are now using Proctorio in its place. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Any questions about the difference between verification and integrity? Or any other items or comments that you'd like to make before I move on?
Joe, I wanted to tell you that one year I purchased papers offline for nursing papers, and I graded them and I handed them out to the students. And I said, I just want to let you know, this is what's on the web for you, and
Okay.
run between C's and D's as I'm grading them. So I don't, what do you mean? They said it's an A paper. And actually, as I looked at it, and I said, please don't hand anything in from anybody else. So it's also like having that knowledge about what's there, because I honestly didn't know you could buy all these papers.
Oh,
At
yeah.
that time, I didn't know that. So then when I went and purchased them and graded them, I didn't get that problem that year.
That is such a wonderful thing that you did for your students there, you know, because they're going to go out there, and you know, it's the Wild West. It's let the buyer beware. They should be doing vetting of their own if they're going to go ahead and do this, and if they're going to pay for something, they should make sure that they're getting what they're paying for. But obviously, we're trying to avoid that at the get-go, and I think providing these types of examples to our students would certainly be helpful to some. You're going to get a few students that are going to say, oh, I don't give a shit. And you're going to get others that are going to say, oh, geez, I guess I'm not going to do that. So, you know, you provide the mechanism to try to divert them from even the idea of going down this road if we can. Thank you very much for sharing that. All right, let's back off here, go back to our Padlet. And as we can see, our first column of tool topic is SafeAssign. This is a tool built right into Blackboard. Some of you may have used it. Some of you may have heard it. Why don't you tell me if you've used it by putting that in the chat? I would appreciate that. Then I know how in depth I need to go in some instruction here. And it works a lot like another tool that many teachers have heard of called Turnitin. This is included with Blackboard, so there's no cost to you to use that. There would be a cost to use something like Turnitin for an instructor, but you can choose to use that tool if you'd like. And there's other tools like SafeAssign. So this first post here, I'll pop it out, indicates one of our one sheets that we've created recently. And in this case, our category was plagiarism detection tools. And indeed, besides SafeAssign, we've also looked at Plagiarisma and Google. And I've already mentioned there's Unicheck and Turnitin. So, you know, we're not trying to do this in totality, but to give you an idea of some comparative things that you can look at on these one sheets. Of course, the great thing here would be that SafeAssign is a Blackboard integrated piece. We did do an integration with Unicheck and Blackboard, and it's just a pilot right now, but you would see that Blackboard integration in Unicheck if you decided you wanted to give it a try. And which ones provide PowerPoint support, which ones have video and audio feedback, etc. So this is just something to have a quick look at the various tools that we vetted for a brief period of time, and what we came up with in terms of some important features. These aren't all the features of some of these tools, obviously, but we did a subset or select set of features on the tools that we compared. But you can look at that at your leisure because it's right here in the Padlet. Now, let's talk about SafeAssign. And obviously, you can find out a lot of information about SafeAssign by going to Blackboard Help. And this particular post is taking us right to the SafeAssign search category for using it inside Blackboard. And one of the best ways to use SafeAssign in Blackboard is via the assignments feature or tool that you have in your Blackboard courses. And you can see some information here about how to enable SafeAssign for your assignments, and gives you some background about how SafeAssign works. It uses this global reference database, and Also, you can add information to that database if you want to about URLs that you know students have been using to provide some materials that they did not cite properly. And then if you are actually having them upload particular files into SafeAssign, these are the types of files that it will be able to check for you, okay? Pretty much the gamut, including, that's where I could have sworn that you could upload an Excel spreadsheet to SafeAssign, but maybe not. Yeah, it does say that spreadsheet aren't supported. Okay. That must be something else I'm thinking of. But indeed, all different types of mostly text-related type of files can be utilized in order to have that checked for originality by the SafeAssign feature inside of Blackboard. All right, and then you get a report, and so can your students. And let's take a look at how this actually works. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to a course here, demonstration course that we utilize for a variety of things. And when you would do a Blackboard assignment, you would probably pick learning content or some similar section of your course to put that assignment in, correct? And you would go to the assessments tab on a content page, and you would pick the Blackboard assignment feature as though you were doing any assignment whatsoever. And we would come up with a name for this assignment, like we'll call it AI for academic integrity, number 1. Right, just to give it a name for this purpose. You could put some information in here, and you're filling out all the typical fields related to an assignment in Blackboard. You can upload your own document, whether it's a document for instructions or a document that you want your students to utilize as part of their assignment submission process, providing a due date, providing points, obviously, because it's a gradable object, and a rubric if you want to. But here is our key component towards making it a SafeAssign submission. In the submission details area, when you expand that, you have the opportunity to provide this plagiarism tool, which indeed is SafeAssign. And by simply checking this box, you're now going to allow any submission by your students to go through automatically the SafeAssign originality check and a report to be generated. Now, you can allow that report to be viewed by the students if you click this box. We think that's a good idea because we hope that this tool is meant as a learning piece for the students to learn, how to cite better, and it'll tell them where they need to provide some citing references, because the function of the research that the tool does will indicate any matches that it finds either on the web using its own browser search tool, or in the database that we said the information goes into. And if ever needed, you can exclude their submissions from that reference database, especially if you might provide their first opportunity to do this as a draft. If it's a draft and you want them to just see how this works, then making sure that it doesn't get into the global reference database will also ensure that you don't get multiple references or copies when you actually do the final rendition of an essay that you might be asking them to provide for you. But generally speaking, if you're doing a one-time submission, we leave that off. And then you do the rest of the options that you want to have for your actual assignment, and you go ahead and submit that. I have to put a grade value. Yes, I do. Thank you for reminding me. And that would be right here. We'll just get some 10 points, and I can go ahead and freely submit this. It shows up, obviously, at the bottom of the page, and there it is. And it's just a regular assignment. And when I complete the assignment, I'm going to submit a document or provide the assignment information that my instructor is looking for just in a text box. And this would also be go through the SafeAssign process. Okay. So anything that you submit here is going to be checked, and we would, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back as an instructor here real quickly and show you that your submissions can be looked at under the course tools area of your course. And we're going to go down to the SafeAssign tool here and open it up. We already have some pre-submitted items here, which is why I'm just circumventing what I was doing before. And notice that you can go directly to those kinds of items that were set up as assignments. Or if needed, you can always direct submit something. So if a student provided you a paper by email or some other mechanism, you certainly can just quickly submit that in a direct fashion. And here's where you can suggest to the database that you have a URL that's been used by a couple of your students, and you want to provide that for the next person that's using the system. Now, here are the assignments that we had indicated for our students. And indeed, our A1 is down here, but it's not indicated as a safe assignment. Don't remember why not. But in any case, here's one here that was utilized before. And in order for you to look at this, you would just click on the chevron and view the submissions by your students. You'll also see this information if you go directly through the Grade Center. You're going to have an ability to grade the student there and look at the originality report from the Grade Center as well. But I just wanted to show you that this tool was here in the course tools area. So you can see that we've had 3 submissions in this case by students, kind of bogus students. And the first person here has had only a 13% match. So that's a good indication that they didn't copy a lot of material. And the second one here by Mr. Joe Scocozza has 100% plagiarism indicated. And we can see the report by clicking on any one of these essay report icons, and it shows the items that have been indicated by the originality report after it went through the search mechanism in the database, and it applies some color coding to make it easy for you. And over here, you can look at what these resources are. On the right-hand side, we have something that came from Northampton itself, something from Rutgers, and something from the Middle States Accreditation website. So this is the originality report, which can go to both you and the students, always goes to you. And you would use this as a guide to determine whether or not you felt that the student was being dishonest versus just not citing properly. And then maybe go back and tell them, hey, why don't you resubmit this and do some better citing. So that's what SafeAssign originality reports look like. Sandy, have you ever had to actually do them in CISC? Have you ever tried to apply this in CISC courses?
I did it for one time when I gave a very short one-page paper for a project, but I don't usually do papers. Discussions, yes, but not papers.
And you can't use this tool on discussions, but
No.
you could.
But I have submitted some discussions which I thought to be plagiarized. And I submitted to see if it would come up as part of a database anywhere. It did not. So
and
I don't use it.
Sandy was referring to there. So you could take the information directly from the discussion board or some other tool that you have and open up the SafeAssign tool here and then do the direct submission here. So anything that you would put here can go, you could put it in as a document and you could submit that and it could go through the process and you'll get an originality report under this, in this section of the dashboard for SafeAssign. Okay, going back to our Padlet. Any questions about SafeAssign at this point? You can review the material that's here at your leisure. And if you intend to try to utilize this in your course, Again, I think it could be discipline related, but not necessarily. Not seeing any comments. All right.
Nope.
So our second tool is called BioSig ID. This tool can be used both for academic integrity and for verification of identity. It's something we've been using for about 5 years now, especially in online learning, when at one point we required it for our online learning courses because it was important that we were verifying that the students that were doing the work are definitely the students that were registered for the course. We were trying to ensure that we weren't getting any phantom scholars and folks that were sitting in for the real students. The one thing that's really good about BioSig ID is it asks for proofing of their identity. So they would submit identity, typically some type of governmental document that has a picture and some other information, and that identity gets proofed through a system that they have, that they work with, and it does verify the user right from the get-go when they go through an enrollment process. The enrollment process actually asks each student that does it to create a biometric signature, and that signature is their quote-unquote password that you might ask them to use before they take a test, before they look at some material in your course, or possibly before they do some particular assignment. So that signature tool is a gate to something that they would do after they have successfully done their signature to get to the next item in your course. I'll show you a little bit about using this video here, what that actually is comprised of and how the student goes about enrolling in the BioSig process using bioproof identity verification.
Welcome. This video will demonstrate how easy it is to enroll with BioProof ID's electronic identity proofing system. Using BioSig ID's patented technology, the user draws a biometric password a total of 3 times. Each time the user draws their password, it captures the biometrics and stores it in the user's profile for comparison during future validations. Next, the user is asked to use their mobile device to prove their identity and are given new instructions.
So what's important about creating that password, and the reason that it's a very effective tool, and it also is careful about, there's other tools that are sort of like this that are retina detectors and fingerprint readers and whatnot, but that's some data about a person that we don't necessarily want to put out there on a site. And in this case, this is a process that the student is creating, and it's not what they write, but how they write it that's important, that will be difficult for anyone else to replicate, because the way you do things is harder to replicate than what you do. So the fact that I don't remember exactly what that password was, 47TX or something like that. It's not so much the actual numbers, but the way those numbers were written and letters were written that really is being saved in the artificial intelligence behind this particular tool.
The first step is to choose one of the 2 methods on the left to begin the process on their smartphone or tablet. Here, our user has entered their phone number to open the BioProof ID app on their mobile device. The user opens the link and launches the app. First, they are asked what kind of document they will be using. Users can choose between a photo ID or a passport. Here, the user plans to authenticate their driver's license, so they are asked to have their photo ID ready, laying it down on a flat surface with the photo facing up to take a picture of the front side.
They get the idea, they take a picture of the ID. I'm just advancing a little.
Turn the ID over and to take a picture surface.
So at this point,
The last thing the user is asked to do is to take a selfie that will be compared to the photo on the front of the driver's license. Afterwards, the user taps the submit button to send the photos and to be verified.
And the license has been verified.
The verification process could last anywhere from 15 to 90 seconds as the BioProof ID servers are checking the authenticity of the driver's license and making sure that the same person that took the selfie matches the photo on the front of the driver's license. Lastly, the user draws their biometric password one last time to lock in and complete the enrollment of BioProof ID with electronic identity proofing.
And bing, once they do that, they're enrolled. And then at certain points in your course, you would add gates, if you will, to have them use that biometric signature before they can actually take an exam or do an assignment, as I had indicated in the beginning. So a very effective tool. I'm not sure how many of you would want to use this. And somebody asked earlier this morning, when with any of these integrity items, how often during the course would we want to be checking these kinds of things? And I would think that number one, it has to do with the span of your course, whether it be 10 weeks or 16 weeks. But I think generally speaking, if you ask your students or challenge your students to do this 3 to 5 times throughout the semester, that would be an appropriate mechanism for us to be sure that indeed the student that is taking your course is the correct one, and that you're providing some evidence that you've actually gone through this process a few times with your students. All right. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know that some of you may have a bigger interest in learning more about Proctorio, but do we have any questions about BioSig? And if you would like to utilize this going forward, I'm happy to show you how you might actually use the mechanism in a course, as I did with the SafeAssign. Is anybody interested in me doing that, or should we move on to Proctorio? And I don't want to keep you guys on too long tonight, and we've got, probably another 20 minutes to go here. So give me some feedback. How would you like me to proceed? Go to Proctorio or show you a little bit more about how BioSig is implemented in a course? Megan says Proctorio.
Proctorio, I agree.
Okay.
Proctorio.
All right, there we go. All right, moving on. So, yeah, and again, I've left this reference for you here in the Padlet, so you can click on these guides here if you want to get a little bit more information about BioSig ID. So Proctorio, as I said, is one of our main tools now for making sure that an assessment that we're doing in Blackboard is being done with integrity. There are a number of features inside of Proctorio itself, using your Blackboard exams that will allow you to decide what mechanisms you want to apply in terms of what it monitors, what it doesn't monitor, the types of behaviors and the flagrancy, I know that's probably not a word, of those behaviors, how severe they are or not, and goes well beyond what we were capable of applying using a tool like Respondus Lockdown Browser in the past. How many of you actually have used Respondus? Put that in the chat for me, please. Previously. It is not available any longer. We severed our license on August 31st. So Deb did. So please, what we want to make sure of is that anybody that copies their course from past semester to current semester, that any remnants of Respondus are removed from your current fall courses. That's an important piece now, since we don't want to confuse the students that we don't have that feature available to us anymore. All right. So Deb understands, maybe if she's used Respondus, that was more or less like, okay, it's on or it's off. And there were certain mechanisms that the Respondus application allowed or helped us keep students from venturing into. They couldn't go to any other browsers. They couldn't use any other applications. It turned off a lot of tools on their on their course when they were using their computer. So it was sort of on or off, where Proctorio gives you this smorgasbord, if you will, of settings that you decide what's important and what isn't to have on or off. All right, and you're going to see that really in just a moment. I want to mention that, Proctorio would like me to tell you that this is what they call a comprehensive learning integrity platform. And in many ways, you'll see that there is some substance to that. But looking at it from the backwards going forward, this particular image that you see here is sort of the results that you would have once you have had students take an exam using Proctorio settings in that exam. There's a gradebook feature in your Blackboard column that would give you access to this dashboard or gradebook and allow you to see exactly what your students went through during their session in the exam. So if you required a video recording, you can watch that video recording. If you wanted to ensure that they didn't go to another web browser, you would see that for sure. If you wanted to know if they took their eyes off of the camera that was watching them and they maybe looked down at some other device, you'll see those patterns emerge out of this dashboard, which also gives us sort of almost like that SafeAssign originality report, a listing. And I know this is hard to see, but this first one right here says that there's some violations, possibly 77% of the time, where down at the bottom here, the violations that it recorded were approximately 29% of the time that the student was taking the test. So this gives you sort of a gauge or a guide to decide, well, there may be one or two or three that I want to look at more closely than the rest of the population that took the test. We don't want you having to have to monitor every person that takes an exam. But what you see here in this dashboard, you have control over in the Proctorio settings. So we'll get back to that in a minute. So if you look through this again at your own time, you can see that it wants to give you confidence that it provides a number of different ways to secure your exam. They say identity is verified, not quite like BioSig, because you're doing the verification in this case. That is, if you're requiring them to show an ID during the pre-test, and obviously you have a camera on, that you can do that verification of whatever you see on their ID. Definitely seems like them in their picture, and that's the extent of the verification. There's no subsystem that's going to take that identity tool or their whatever ID they use and verify that that ID is indeed valid somewhere, like BioProof does with BioSig, right? But this is a platform, and we're just learning it, just like you are. It's new to us as of the end of July, basically, and we just started doing some trainings in August for it. If you've missed some of those trainings, I'll try to remember to put in the Padlet a link to a recording that we've done on those trainings to give you more information. There's also support directly from Proctorio for this tool. I really think this is important, and I want you to know about it. And it's there for both you and your students. So this is a page that your students can come to, and it basically, as you can see up in the URL up here, is simply proctorio.com/support. And you can give them this link in your course, but they also have access to it directly, and I'm going to show you where they have access to that. And this is very good for your students to, one, be able to get some information, how to set it up. There's an FAQ here, what the requirements are. And even indeed at the bottom, I don't know if it's on this page. Okay, there's actually a live chat mechanism, or you can email them. I'm trying to see if they actually have the live chat button on this page.
I don't think it's on this page, Joe. I think
You
it's just the
probably
one
have
in
to
the
go
course.
here first.
Yeah.
Let's see if this takes us there. No, this brings us back to the same page, right? So you're going to have to use the mechanism in the course to get to the live chat, and I'll show you that in a moment. Going back to here. All right. So this is the mechanism in the course right here. So what we ask every student to do when they're going to take a Proctorio exam is to install a plugin or extension in the Chrome browser. And it's important to note that only Google Chrome can be used for Blackboard exams with Proctorio, okay? And that goes for you as test creators as well. Make sure that you're using Google Chrome and that you have this extension installed too when you're creating and deploying your exams inside of Blackboard if you're using Proctorio, okay? But you can see that whenever this tool is invoked, this is at the top of the Google browser, just to the left of if they were logged in as an individual. This puzzle piece is your extension icon, and this shield is your particular Proctorio extension icon. Here's where the student or you can click on live chat or go to the Help and Support Center, and they can open up a live chat from that page as well. And we think it's best for your student to get that support directly from Proctorio. They have a whole bunch more answers to situations than we do at this point, okay? So I want you guys to be aware of that. I'm going to show you that in a course as well as via this posting. And then we have for you here a small list, a very short list of some quick troubleshooting tips which we started to gather, and we're going to add to this list as we go. Not only will it be on this Padlet, but will be on other locations that we're going to make reference to in the near future. All right? So remember to come back to this troubleshooting tips. We have someone online that has already spoken a lot. Miss Marilyn Metter has seen Proctorio at its best and at its worst already this semester, and can probably give us some of her own anecdotal war stories, but we'll hold on to that for a while. I want to go into a course and show you what it looks like to do Proctorio. And if you want to throw out any questions, you're welcome to do so while I get there. Okay, so here we are in another demo course, and basically what you would do is you would pick any exam that you already have as a test inside of Blackboard. So we're going to use this assessments feature and click a test. I hope I have something left here, but I don't. All right. So if I did have something here, I would select it. All right. And I would go to my settings for that exam. But since we did this at 11 o'clock today, I'm going to go down to the exam that I did today, which is this one right here. All right. Let's just make believe we just deployed this exam in this learning content space. And now we're going to make sure that our settings are done. That is the typical settings that you're used to. All right. And those are, does it open in a new window? Is it available to students? Are we allowing multiple attempts? Forcing completion, setting a timer, a display when it's available, when it's not. Ooh, what's this? We have a password in there. And that's because Proctorio has been invoked on this particular exam already. So don't go and mess up this by saying, hey, I don't have a password. I'm going to delete that, okay? That's going to foobar the mechanism, as I like to say, all right? You got your due date, and you've got your assessment options and results for your test and how it's presented. And this is usually where we're done. But now, because we've said we want to apply Proctorio settings right here by using this checkbox, we now get all these other settings for our exam right here inside our test options or settings mechanism. All right. So here are your exam settings for Proctorio. You've got a lot of options. Here are your recording options. Do you want to record video? If it's black, it means it's on. If it's clear, it's not. So if we wanted to record audio, we would just click this. And if we don't, we just click it again. If we want to find out more information about any one of these things, all we have to do is click on this little check question mark right here. And it's going to hopefully take us out to our instructor version of Proctorio Help. Okay. Once again, just like this morning, Sandy, the mechanism did not work properly. It brought us to the student help page. So I'm going to try it again and click on this question mark. And it should bring us to Zendesk. And this time it did. This morning it took us 3 tries to get to exactly where I wanted to be. Tonight it took us 2 tries to get to where I wanted to be. But this is what you're looking for at your level. That would be the instructor level. You should come to proctorio.zendesk.com for all of your help. The students should come here to proctorio.com support. Okay? So your support is under this particular URL. Right now, it brought us particularly, because it's context sensitive, to this information about the tool that we wanted to know more about, which was recording the screen. Okay? So you can actually, it'll record everything your student does on their computer if you choose this mechanism, and you can learn about it right here. Let's go back to our test options page. So if I wanted to record that screen, now that I know more about it, by clicking this question mark, I can choose record screen. All right. Notice that it comes down here and says, you want to use only one screen? Because sometimes students can have 2 screens or displays. All right, we might want to click that. And again, all these other options are here at your disposal. Tonight's time frame does not allow us to go through each and every one of them. But if you watch one of the recordings of the trainings, it'll talk about each one of these. But as you can see, you could go and click on any one of these question marks, and it's going to give you some type of information about this particular tool. All right. So now we have some verification options here. Okay? And we have some in-quiz or in-test tools that you can provide to your students. Give them use of a calculator or a whiteboard. Once you have this all said and done, you can see the exam summary here of what you've chosen and make some choices as well. And last but not least, you have your behavior settings. And I'm going to suggest to you initially that you just choose recommended here. And I'm also going to propose that it would be a good idea for you to provide a practice exam using Proctorio so that you will learn from it and your students will learn from it. You may decide that behavior settings are a little bit too strong and you might want to make them lenient, or they may be too weak and you might want to make them a little bit more moderate or difficult. Those behavior settings basically are going to indicate the flags that the AI component of this tool, as it's monitoring the test-taking process, will show you, like that percentage of violation that's happening in the report that you get on the backside when you're looking at the Proctorio gradebook. But you can also effectively change the metrics of each of the pieces of the tool here yourself. Obviously, down in the green mechanism, it's less lenient. More lenient. And in the red area focus, they're going to pay a little bit more attention to the particular metric that you're monitoring. So if they're navigating away, and that's an important thing that you want to monitor, that will be flagged a little bit more aggressively if somebody actually does navigate away from the particular site Blackboard test that is and goes to another page on the Chrome browser. All right. So how you set this up is going to determine the report that you get at the back end. And then there are also some other exam metrics that can be monitored here. So as you can see, there's a lot to this. I would suggest the first time around that you use a very recommended and generic setting, learn a little bit more about what each of these things does, and give it a try and see what works best. Right? Some environmental things that are involved here. And if you wanted to, you can actually create a profile when you know that you want to reuse the particular settings that you have above here, all this a la carte stuff. And then you could apply that profile automatically to other exams so you don't have to do each and every one like we have done here in this particular moment. So once you have all your settings provided, you submit that, your test is deployed, okay? And then it's down here at the bottom. And if I were to take the test, I'm not a student right now, so it's going to bark at me. I at first, just like other Blackboard tests, see some instructions. But then when I go to begin the test, this is where Proctorio intervenes. Okay? Since I am not a student, it's not going to allow me to go any further. But at this point, your students will get the Proctorio information. It's going to say, you know, here's what you need to do in order to take this test via Proctorio. And then it's going to go to the pre-test options that you've selected in the settings. And then finally, your students will start taking the exam. All right. So that's how the mechanism is imposed, overlay on top of the Blackboard test itself. All right. And then again, when you go to the grade center, after students have actually taken the test. All right, this one will be all the way at the end because we created it this morning. So here's our syllabus test, and we can click here on this button and notice that right here I have this View Proctorio Gradebook, and I can actually see, although there's not going to be any results because there's been no test takers, and it tells you that right here. But this is where I would see, go back to the Padlet real quick, I would see this particular view right here of the gradebook. And I would see my individual rows of students, and each one of them has a profile in the Proctorio gradebook that I can review. All right, that is the nuts and bolts. Get back out of here. Do we have any questions about Proctorio? Or do we want to make any particular comments? Anybody out there? Fran left.
Fran left, yes.
Okay.
So I was just wondering you said Marilyn had already used it. What
Yeah.
obstacles or challenges she had?
Marilyn?
Well, we did 2 practice tests to begin with, and the students had difficulty being in the program. So what would happen is they would get a cue to have a password. So they had to talk to Proctorio, and we have them talk on camera now, so that if they're calling them, we're actually hearing what's being said. But they could not get the extension activated in some way. So that was one problem. The main problem I'm having is that it flags everything. Okay, one student just has this habit. She looks up, and so she got flagged, I don't know, maybe 45 times during the hour. But no, it really worked very well, and the students are able to use it. I'm disappointed that we can't go question by question, because that is how our NCLEX is. We have to do full page. And that's a disadvantage for them in terms of going into their licensing exam. But the students really have very few complaints about it. It's just this getting in, and then some of them have interruptions in their internet service. But what I love about the program is it saves everything. so that they have an interruption, their questions are saved. They don't have to start over.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Marilyn and a lot of the nursing faculty have been really gracious and patient because, again, it's a new tool to all of us. We piloted it briefly in the end of summer, beg your pardon, actually in spring. We had some radiography students use it in spring. But that was a relatively small N, if you will, as far as sampling. And it's more widespread usage now. And indeed, we're finding a few things that we are all learning. And the nursing faculty have been very generous in helping us learn some of these things by giving us a lot of feedback. But that,
I just want to comment. I really appreciate how much you all help us.
thank
That's the thing. I really do.
The thing I do want to say, and I think somewhat of what Marilyn was mentioning there, is that most people don't have a problem at all the first time through. The folks that do have a problem, it's really hard for us to say why they're having that problem still, and that's what's really aggravating, I guess. But we have found that if they do multiple tries, I don't mean taking the test multiple times, but if they click on the test link in Blackboard, after the first time they might get stuck at the password page, and they try it again, they might get through the second time. If it happens a second time, they might get through the third time. It's just this weird timing or connection thing that seems to be knocking some students off. And we don't know whether it's their connection at home.
Yeah, I think it's the connection. I agree.
There literally does have to be a connection between the Blackboard course that student is in, Proctorio out there in the cloud. That's a very important piece to this program. And when that connection doesn't seem to be being made, it barks, it gets frustrated, and it runs into these kinds of things. But you saw it happen to me when I was trying to go to support here, right? Even me, I clicked on something and it didn't take me to the right page. It took me to this page because it did not recognize me as an instructor. It was recognizing me as a student. But I finally clicked on it twice, and like I said, this morning it was 3 times till I actually got to the correct page here. So in this case, patience is a virtue for your students, and that's the biggest thing that I can recommend at this point. And then secondly, if they are having problems, have them go right up here to the extension, clicking Proctorio, and opening up a live chat and going to this help and support page here, which again, and look at that. See, now it has recognized me as an instructor because it's not taking me to the student page, it's taking me to the instructor page. Again, this is really good for you guys. There is so much information here on this page that when you click on this, wow, you've got getting started guide, using Proctorio overview, best practices. There's so much information in here, and we don't want you to have to learn this whole thing on your own. But if you have questions, I would suggest that you at least take a look at this and see if you can find a category for that question. And there's even a search tool up here too, okay?
Joe, would you go back to the tab again on the menu, the
Sure.
Proctorio tab? Because I think that's easy. They can see what students will see.
I know that this has happened a couple of times where the password out of sync has shown up.
Oh.
So I just typed the word password in the search mechanism here inside the Proctorio Zendesk, and I found these items related to password. So, you know, that's a cool thing. I think that you can have options there. Now, you wanted me to go up here, Sandy? Is that
Yeah, and then if you click on the Proctorio tab on the menu bar.
right here?
No, on the left menu,
Right,
on the
okay.
left.
So this tool provides this mechanism here, but over here, Sandy's saying, this Proctorio section that we did put in every course also has this folder for
Right.
Proctorio setup and support.
And and students can get the help chat right there too. So the last one for test takers, If they have a problem, they can click on that and find the chat. So students can go right there as well.
It is. Okay.
And that's, see, that chat is right there.
It's strange how, this page is not the same page that I was showing you 10 minutes ago.
I think that's because that
Couldn't tell
looks
you.
like it may just be designed for students. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose. All right. But in any case, you have more information here. They have to use Chrome, and so should you. And they have to, of course, install the Proctorio extension. And it just brings them to this page. And as you can see, it actually tells them if it's done properly. If it's not done properly, there would be something here that says install, and they would click on that. They would put it in there for them. They would get to another page that would add the extension. So I think when it works very well. And that's a really rough thing to be telling newbies about a new tool. But we're going to get better with it. As a matter of fact, Chris and I have a meeting with the folks at Proctorio tomorrow. We're going to talk about some other things that came up in the past few days, and we're ironing out some of the bells and whistles and issues that have resonated over the past week or so, and the feedback that we've gotten from folks like Marilyn. So we'll get some more information out to everybody soon, I hope. Okay? Any other questions or comments? All right. I'll go ahead and just post the Padlet into the chat here one last time. In case you missed it, if you want to click on that link, then you'll have it at your disposal. You can bookmark it if you want. And I'll have, I have a recording session here from this morning, but I'll put tonight's recording in here as well if you want to review it. All right, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for your involvement tonight, and appreciate the questions and the interaction, and hope that if you have any follow-up, you certainly can contact Sandy or I if you would like to get more information, or NCC EdTech. Have a good night, and we'll see you again at the next session.
All right.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you for
Yeah,
everything.
Welcome.
Joel, and thank you.
You're
Good night.
welcome. Good night.
Good night, all.